Kia ora, Lara here, and I'm going to share with you a layout created again with Skylark. If you want to see another layout that I've created using this collection, check out my last video. And just like the last video, I am going to do some stamping on a photo. So here I'm using the February stamp of the month, Say It With Flowers, which has got some gorgeous little flowers all over it. I'm going to use this a few times on the layout, both here just sort of to create a kind of vignette around the photograph, but also on the page I'm going to do some stamping and using the thin cuts with it. So this photo is of some of the peonies that we picked up from a market just before Christmas, and we sort of separated these across a couple of vases and they decorated both our inside and outside table until everyone got so much hay fever that I had to move them all outside. So I'm just matting this stamped photo. So I've stamped this with the you can see the archival black there, but I actually use the intense black ink to stamp on the photo because it's a shiny surface, and then I let that dry overnight. So I'm going to use here the Skylark stencil. So Skylark collection is available till the end of January and possibly longer if stocks last. And here I'm just sort of putting in some of the Glacier ink and sort of pushing that through with what could be termed a makeup brush, but just a blending brush. So with these brushes I sort of have them color coded into general colors so that I don't have to wash them all the time, but that it's not going to create too much of a problem if I use it with a similar color and it's not exactly the same. So now I'm going to bring in some Lagoon and just sort of add a little bit more colour into parts of this, not quite as thoroughly as I did with the Glacier, because I just want a little bit of the two tones, the softer colour and the darker colour, just sort of peeking through in that background. This is a fun way to make different backgrounds for your layouts and for your pages. Just using different stencils, and the Skylark one's gorgeous because it's 12 by 12. It makes this whole page background thing really easy, and also you can do smaller projects as well as bigger ones with it. So there's how that photo sort of sits on the background at the moment. I'm going to pull in some more of the Skylark collection, just some of the papers, but I'm just playing on sort of that lagoony kind of colour that was there, that I've used in those inks in the background, just because when I first played around with the photo, these colours sort of helped the photo to pop. So the pinks contrasted with these nice blues really helps the photo sort of be that centre stage piece. I'm just tearing down both sides of these. I'm tearing towards me so that the paper pieces show through, so you've got that white kind of edge. If I tore it the other direction, you generally won't see the white. So just play around with some of your tearing if you're not sure how that is going to work or how that will look. And again, I'm doing the same thing with sort of this greeny colour. Now this is a colour that is similar to the grass in the background of this photograph, so it isn't going to be centre stage as much, but it's just going to be hidden in behind that lagoon strip. So I've made this a little bit wider than that other piece, so now they can just sort of sit between those two layers, or those two sort of areas that I had blended the inks through. So just sticking them down and happy with how they look. I wanted those rough edges, didn't want it to look like completely uniform. Now going to bring in some of the white gloss spray, and I'm going to go both over the papers and the background stenciling for this, just to add a little bit more interest when you look at the page later on. So I had these sort of leftover white pieces. I've just got them there because I know I'm going to bring them in at some point, but just not quite yet. So at this stage I'm going to do a bit more photo matting, pulling out some of these other colours that are in the Skylark collection. I think I need to get some more of this. Just these colours are very much the kinds of colours I like to use on my pages, so these pages have been fun to put together. So the stripy one there just at the very back, and then I'm going to rough up the edges so they've got a bit more texture around them. And to do that, I'm just sort of gently curling and folding the edges around as we go, not doing it in any particular tidy fashion, but just wanting to add a little bit more depth and texture through that process. So to add to that depth and texture, I'm just using some thin 3D foam tape here as the adhesive to stick the photo mat down. It'll help lift it up, and it also gives room if I want to tuck some of the embellishments under where I've stuck that photo. So I'm just pulling out some of the stamp acrylic bases that I'm going to use for this, and I've just stuck down already a couple of the stamps. So this one here is from the Skylark collection. There's a stamp set that goes with Skylark, and you will, if you've watched my last video, you'll know that I use this collection, the stamp in there as well. So I am just pulling in some of these again in a different way, and these are going straight on the layout. It's kind of scary putting them straight onto the layout sometimes because you never know if it'll quite work, but when you're doing a layout like this with the different textures, layers, and stamping and stuff, it doesn't have to be perfect. So in this instance, I'm going to stamp one of the February stamp of the month, Say It With Flowers, onto a piece of white daisy cardstock. However, I then realised that I should have, normally when I use thin cuts, I will do the thin cutting first and then I will stamp on the thin cut piece. Because our acrylic blocks are see-through, I can do that. Here I did it round the wrong way, and then I corrected that and did that. So this stamp here is part of the collection that I'll be showcasing next month. I've just forgotten the name of it off the top of my head. If I think of it, I will share that later on. So it's a gorgeous wee set with some different frames and different bits and pieces. There's a paper collection, and the frame that I'm putting there is actually part of the Cardmaking stamp set. So yeah, so I've stamped more of those flowers and used the thin cut, which also is available with the stamps of the month, and I'm just layering them up around at a few different points on the page, and using sort of the fact that I didn't stick the photo down flat, use that 3D foam, meaning that I can tuck bits and pieces in and under and around it a whole lot easier. So happy with that. I contemplated colouring the stamps, but I actually quite like the black and white look with them. So pulling out a few more of these stamps, I'm going to stamp the longer ones with the stems and the flower at the top down that bottom right hand side, just where I've sort of started creating another wee cluster in there. So I play with that one, and then I decide I'm going to pull out another one as well. It just sort of needs that combination of heights and things in that space rather than just being a one-off. So I've got those stamps there, and it will be time soon to actually stick them all down. So here I'm just using a tape adhesive and then repositioning the flowers sort of where I had got them from before, sort of pressing them down a little bit. So these stamps, these little flowers, I can see them being used on so many different projects. Both the January stamp of the month, which is sort of a journaling, new beginnings, new start kind of stamp set, and this one are going to be really useful throughout the year ahead. Just they have a nice finish and they're really versatile. They're not sort of tied super themey, which makes them quite easy to use. So now I'm just pulling out some of these acrylic shapes and working out where I might want to put them on the page before sticking them down with the liquid glass. So just a small dot or so of those seems to help stick them fairly permanently onto the pages, and just popping those all in place before very carefully putting the lid back on so it hopefully will all stay together. So the sticker sheet that came with Skylark had a few stickers when I first looked at it that I thought would go nicely, and I just put this one on and decided not to use any others at this stage. Wondered about some of the circles and different bits and pieces, but decided to leave that. So I hadn't really fully contemplated what I was going to use for my title, so I went through my lettering or my alpha stamps and found this one, I think it's called Whimsy, that I thought would be quite nice for my title, which is going to be Peonies, and spelling it backwards tucking it in there. So it did come out really nicely, and I'm pleased that I chose this stamp set for the page. It just had a little bit enough of the whimsy to go with the flowers and sort of the fact that the peonies aren't in their best condition, but it was just one of those little moments from that sort of Christmas period where they were on the table and they were just quite a nice sense of gave a sense of satisfaction, or those simple pleasures as the simple moments, small things, as the sort of sayings on this page go. So the P is meant to be lowercase, but because it's a P, I was able to make it look like a capital letter for the start of the title. So now I'm just adding the journaling essentially about second to the Christmas lilies that I love the smell of. Peonies are kind of one of these other flowers that sort of set that Christmas scene or that thinking of. They are the simple joys of a Christmas table, I guess. So I've used the charcoal or the grey pen for this. I didn't want the journaling to stand out so much that it took over. So just here's some other shots of this layout. Thanks heaps for watching. Hope if you've found this interesting and you're not already one of my subscribers that you will subscribe. Thanks again.